Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, May 24th, 2024, and this is episode 905 of Living Free in Tennessee. It's a Homestead Happenings show today. So we're going to talk to you about all of the things going on the homestead, as well as anything else we want to talk about. If you have questions today, please put the word question in all caps, followed by your question. That does not have to be on all caps so that I can see it. I am working on a small computer screen far away from me as we reevaluate how to set up the living room studio at post construction. So you are not on my big TV, so I can't see what you're saying, really. That is the way it is. I'm joined by Tactical Redneck today, and we're going to talk about weaning the bottle lamb. We're going to talk about a gardening update. We're going to talk about what wild foods are in the woods that I've seen, because he hasn't seen any. And coming off the crazy train of my schedule of the last 2.5 or so months, what that's looking like. We are 2 days into post rush mode.
I get still kind of
Isn't it way calmer now?
It is way calmer.
Yeah.
Now it's just catch up mode.
Alrighty, so I do want to bring our featured of the event of the show today up, and that is our annual chicken processing day here at the Holler Homestead. If you want to join us, go to livingfreeintennessee.com. On the right-hand side, you will see the chicken processing workshop, or if you're on our weekly email, then you will see that comes out with the highlight of that particular event. It's a great event. It is on sale for $95. Retail is $125. And you can come out here, spend the day learning how we raise the chickens. By we, I mean Hoffgrid Homestead, because we actually bought them from them this year, but they raise them the same way we used to. And they are excellent quality birds. You get to go home with one. We'll talk to you how to cook them. And we will also show you how to take the bird from alive to in a bag. If you're afraid to dispatch chickens, and maybe you even have meat birds at home, guess what? This is the one for you to come to, because we're pretty good at helping people address that fear and humanely and quickly unalive the birds, so to speak. So that's something that we are pretty good at. I think it's because I teach the class and I'm a girl, which helps, because a lot of times that hesitation is in girls, but not always. And if you come and you're like, I just can't do that part, we'll do it for you and show you the rest of the process so that you can walk away confident. You will also go home with a copy of my guide to fowl processing called Don't Be a Chicken. And it's a little booklet that just walks you through all the ways that you can process and what you need to do, so that when you get home, you have something to refer to. And we will feed you lunch. Menu is currently shepherd's pie and some vegetable-related items. If that is something you cannot eat, we will be sending an email out just asking if there's a dietary restriction that anybody has. Some people have alpha-gal and can't have red meat, but it is shepherd's pie at this time, and it's going to be delicious.
Yeah.
We don't usually serve chicken at the chicken processing workshop. Do you know why, Tactical?
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, there's a smell I get in my nose. He doesn't smell. There's a smell I get in my nose with the feathers, and I'm just like, blah. So that's all happening on June 8th. You get here in the morning, have a coffee, we'll get started, process the birds, have lunch, bag the birds, and you get to go home with your bird. That's the fun of the day. Plus, you get to see the Holler Homestead. Okay. That's over at livingfreeintennessee.com. I also want to thank our two sponsors. Guess who the first one is?
Oh.
Guess what I'm doing after this show? I'm working on my taxes. Guess who the first one is?
Oh, Agorist.
agoristaxadvice.com/webinar. That's where you go to get free webinars about optimizing your tax structure. Matthew Sursley from agoristaxadvice.com is a great advisor who works with you to evaluate all of your dealings, suggests different business structures you can choose so that you take advantage of the tax code, because most of the tax code is about how to avoid paying taxes. And if you can tap into that, you keep more of your money in your pocket. Find out more, agoristaxadvice.com. You know who our other sponsor is?
Nope.
No, because I never talk to him actually until we get on this show, which is part of the fun of the show, isn't it?
Sure.
Sure. He's full of spirit today.
I've got 15 things going through my head right now. So
Okay, so he's in full on ADHD scatter mode this morning. Anyway, it's John Pugliano of the Wealth Studying Podcast. He's got a great podcast that helps you understand how he's making his own investment decisions and learn more about investment, which is a skill all of us can improve. Check out more about that at investablewealth.com. Click on podcasts. That'll just show you how to connect with his podcast, or just look for the Wealth Studying Podcast on your phone. Speaking of which, where's my phone?
Oh,
that's going to be great. It could go off at any time because it's not silenced. Anyway, with that, it's time for our first segment of today's show, and that's forage. What are you finding out there?
stuff that I need to murder.
Yep. So there was a whole set of weeks where he was finding all the fun wild mushrooms, like a good forager, including morels this year. We had a great morel year. And it's the first time I've found morels on my property. By I mean he actually found them. And he found some out in the pasture.
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome. So since then, an oyster mushroom has been found and dryad saddle. And I'm pretty sure it's time for us to go look at the chicken of the woods spot near the gun range that we have. So I'll be doing that later today.
Okay.
And hopefully we find one of those. But if not, life goes on. That's a pretty good mushroom too. So mushrooms are popping. And I think that has to do with the relative level of rain we've been having. How has that rain been?
Impressive.
Yeah. Like yesterday, I was in my PJs and he walks in and says, hey, like PJs means I'm turning off for the day and I'm going to go to bed soon. You better use that compost tea I made before the end of the day. It'll probably still be okay tomorrow, but if you want the life in the compost tea, you need to use it tonight. And I'm like, really? Like, can't I? Well, you could do it first thing in the morning. And I could tell the answer was I really shouldn't do it first thing in the morning. So I went out and I put the compost tea on the garden, and it rained like an inch after that. So I'm not sure how much good that did.
I think all it would have done was water that in.
I mean, there was nowhere in left. It's saturated.
No.
Yeah. I mean, at least it wasn't running off the hill scale of rain, but it was close. And that's kind of how the last few days have been going. It's just like all the rain at one time. Little Sheep, I'm sure, has been wet more than she's been dry up in the pasture.
She seems to be doing fine with it, though.
Yeah. So that's the deal. Anyway, so we've been having a lot of rain, and that means mushrooms are coming out because they like that. We also have dandelion flower. We have red clover, which I'll do some videos on harvesting. Red clover probably is my shorts this week. What else? Perilla. Perilla is coming on. Your favorite plant.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut on
Yeah,
that
Carrie
one.
did a whole post about how you can use perilla and cook with it. And I'm like,
it's good for mulch.
The bane of my existence. It's in the mint family, so it just spreads like a mint, and that means it spreads everywhere. And then we need to start getting motions on reestablishing the watercress patch, which the ducks got into and completely decimated. And this is why I have a tendency when I find wild plants, I like to spread them to other places because I actually know where I can get watercress to transplant in. And actually, if we close the duck out of that patch, it'll probably come back because it's probably still got some there. But I was like, why is it not coming on? Why is it not coming on? It's like going nuts in my aquaponic system. What's going on? And then I saw a little duck swim by in where the patch used to be. And I'm like, I think I know what happened here. Yeah. So that's something just to pay attention to when you raise livestock, like what they will go after. This is why we can't have nice things in the pond.
Yeah.
Well, we can have ducks in the pond or we can have nice things in the pond. We can't have both.
The only thing that I've gotten to do well in the pond was duckweed because it's I just blanked out on the word, reproduces so fast that like they couldn't eat it as fast as it was reproducing, and it took over like I don't know, a third of the pond before winter set in, and then it froze and died.
Did it not come back?
No.
Oh, this year?
No, this was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah, I guess you could put it inside. We are joined by a cat butt today on video.
Again.
Hello, LT.
LT's about to get thrown outside.
Yeah, he's like all about like, oh, you're on the couch doing this show. I will be up in your face. I will walk on your computer. I will jump up and down on your bladder. That's what LT does. Hello, how are you? That's right. Distractions abound on today's show. I did some videos on harvesting the wild rose petals. I'm actually pretty glad that I propagated the wild rose and had some on my property with the bigger petals because it's easier to harvest those. Tactical is less thrilled about that plant. And I managed to get like an entire giant bowl full of rose petals, which I use in teas. It adds a good flavor. There's a vitamin C component, and it's supposed to help you boost your immune system when you're like fighting a cold or something. So I got those, dried them, and I ended up with an entire pint jar crammed full of rose petals for winter teas, which I'm super excited about because last year I got like almost a whole jelly jar. So I got more than double that this time, and I was packing it in because it, like they'll squish down, and it's one of those things where it fit loose in the pint jar, and I was like, well, if I cram it in, then it's just one jar, and I don't have to take up 2 jars worth of space.
Yeah.
So we're set for the winter, which means I can cut back some of those roses, which might happen as part of the food forest maintenance project I am initiating. Our next segment is, guess what?
I don't remember.
It's livestock. What's going on with the livestock, Tactical?
Everybody's being livestock.
Okay, that's not a good answer for people who come here for the update.
For the most part, everybody's doing what they're supposed to do.
So you spent 2 weeks retraining the ducks.
I spent 2 weeks arguing with the ducks. It was literally go to all 4 corners of the holler and chase every single duck all the way into the duck coop every single day for like a week straight. And last night, like almost everybody went in. There was like 4 or 5 that didn't, and then there was the one duck that's like, I really just want to like cut down a tree branch and throw it at you because like it's raining. You might not care about being wet, but I'm not looking to be wet. And the one duck refused to go to bed. So, but everybody else is back to like actually eating food. I think part of it was just they were full on cicadas and they were not food motivated at all.
No, they were like, this tree is dropping delicious bugs. I will stay under this tree.
Yeah.
There's still a yard duck right now.
Yes.
I heard her last night outside my door at like midnight.
Yeah, and that was the one that at like 9 o'clock last night, and it was raining, and she did not want to go to bed, and I was like, I'm like, if you get eaten by a coyote, then oh well.
Do we still have the broodied Muscovy?
I have no idea where that one's at.
Okay, so there's a Muscovy setting eggs because he thought we were down the Muscovy, and then she showed up in the yard, and then she disappeared again, which is a pretty good sign that there's a Muscovy sitting in nest somewhere.
Yeah, and I have no idea where.
So we have to decide when she shows up with little ones what we're going to do about that. Because we can let her raise them, but last time we did that, like predators got the little ones.
I think that was also when we still had the rat infestation.
That's true.
And
that one sat in the coop.
And part of the problem with that was also the fact that she had Muscovy and khaki eggs under her.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which one. I think it was the khakis hatched, but the Muscovies didn't.
Yeah, because the Muscovy timeline is an extra week over the amount of time it takes to hatch khakis.
So depending on where she's setting, I'm hoping, because it's not in the coop this time, I'm hoping it's close enough to the pond that she'll actually like get up and move around a little bit with them, and they'll stand a better chance of actually surviving.
I'm hoping it's more Muscovies, because if not, we've got to do a Muscovy thing.
Yeah.
So it's actually time to get more Muscovies because we only have 3. But the khakis, we also need to trim males in the khakis. So that's going to happen sometime soon. We have the chicken processing workshop coming, so that's where I will probably get through the workshop first, but we'll see. I might just get PO'd at the Drakes and start nailing Drakes. Yeah. That sounded wrong. Anyway, start processing Drakes. So that's where we're at with the poultry. And I see we have a question related to poultry, so I'm going to bring it in now. A. Ray Pierce says, do turkeys turn broody like chickens? I've got one that's sitting on a nest that has nothing in it. I did shove some other turkey udders underneath her yesterday. So some turkeys go broody. Some turkeys will raise their young. A lot of the more meat-oriented turkeys are not as inclined to do that. But if you have one that looks broody, and you know what a broody bird looks like they have this way of looking like happy ducks or happy chickens during the day. And then all of a sudden you'll see one in a broody mode and it's like glaring at you. It looks like it's glaring at you, right?
The interesting part was the chicken yesterday did not move when I...
Yeah, they won't move. They look grumpy.
Yeah.
They fluff out. Some of them will be like the Muscovies will try to bite you.
Yeah, the chicken just looked at me side-eyed like, what are you doing, bro?
Don't get near me, man. Now you can't clean out the chicken coop.
I already did. I just left the one spot where she was sitting on eggs.
Yeah, so they look that way. So if the turkey looks that way, it's probably broody and you might as well see what happens. I like to have food and water kind of close to them. Like we may try to put some water in the coop that she can access because we don't water the chickens in the coop at this time. And we'll just see where it goes. Hopefully this time we'll have a successful chicken breeding situation. Last time I saw that the eggs got destroyed in a thunderstorm, and I don't know if it was like a really bad thunderstorm. I don't know if that freaked the chicken out or they were born and ran off or a predator got in there. She was setting eggs outside. So it would be nice to get some more breasts in here, American breast chickens. So yeah. And then Tactical brought in a bunch of eggs that hadn't been collected for a while. So we just put those in the compost because I didn't feel like dealing with it because I have approximately 4,032 duck eggs right now on top of the fridge. So if anybody wants to buy duck eggs, they're $10 a dozen. You can pick them up here. Let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to start freeze drying some of these because there's always an ebb and flow of duck eggs, and I prefer to eat duck eggs over chicken eggs.
Yeah, we're well past the not getting any eggs.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of eggs right now, which is awesome. In fact, we need to remember to get chicken eggs today too. I saw you came in with the duck eggs. How many do we have today? About 10.
Probably 8 to 10.
8 to 10, yeah. So it's not a ton. We should actually be getting more duck eggs. I think they're letting them out in the yard.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I left for the Midwest Preparedness Project and got stuck behind the down tree, I looked over and there was a khaki Campbell sitting on the nest. When I got home, that nest was gone.
Yeah, I just cleared out in between the duck coop and the pond, at least one section down there, and I found 2 nests in between the duck coop and the pond. So I just tossed all of those eggs.
Yeah, the problem with those is you can crack them individually and see if they're good, or you can candle them first or whatever. But you're going to get some bad ones, and you might actually get ones where there's a half-developed bird in it. At this point, we have so many eggs, I don't need to find the eggs that are good. So
yeah, the chicken eggs that I broke open in the compost pile yesterday, I could smell them. So I can only imagine what would have happened if you had done that. You probably would have been gagging.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yes, you can kind of smell through the eggs if they're bad. Mona says do the float test. So the float test is pretty good because eggs that have more air inside the shell will float. And so the theory is the floaty ones are bad, but they're not always bad. So it just depends on how desperate you are for eggs. And if it stinks, as Mona says, if it stinks, don't open it because it will stink more if you open it. Let's see. It's about time to start planning to wean Stormy. And if you go on sheep forums and ask about weaning, long-term farmers will get all up in your face and be mad at you because you didn't just get them off milk after after 6 weeks.
Whatever.
And other farmers are like, yeah, but you need to go 12 weeks if you're not feeding them creep, which she is not eating creep. She's adjusting to grass. They'll get all mad at you and call you stupid and stuff, which is like par for the course on the sheep forums. But I've learned a lot from them. So we're getting on towards 12 weeks now with Stormy. She's down to 2 bottles a day, and I'm starting to reduce the number of ounces she gets at each time. I was trying to get her down to once a day on a bottle. I think when I wean her, that's what I'm going to do. So she has another few weeks to go. But based on her body condition, she's looking good and fit.
Yeah.
So I don't want her to be too fat. So I'm reducing the milk and just seeing if she gets to where she's looking like I'm too skinny, we'll keep going with the milk until the transition can be done. But we have really, with all this rain, we have some pretty good pasture out there. And I do occasionally give her like cheap creep from my hand, but in general, the sheep are not eating creep. I think Khaki needs to go on some. Last time I saw Khaki, is she still super skinny?
Yeah.
Okay, so Khaki's going to get evaluated for worms as well.
Yeah, Khaki is, and somebody else was, and I can't remember who. I think it might have been Brunhilde, but Brunhilde usually is on the skinnier side.
Is she filling out now?
A little bit.
Okay, so
she's not as skinny as she usually would look, but
so the problem with Khaki is she won't come up to us, but she's the one who needs creep, and then we need to evaluate her for parasites.
Yeah, and
does she have runny poop?
I don't know.
Okay, she did a couple weeks ago, so.
Yeah, it's not. I don't. Just based on what I see when I go over there.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's better, but not fixed.
Yeah, so she's going to need probiotics if she has runny poop, and we need to evaluate her for worms because that's it. Like all of those characteristics I'm describing indicate that she may have a higher parasite load, which means her immune system's down.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is fine. I would like to get the sheep mineral out too. So I'm planning to go to Smithville tomorrow to go to the farmer's market, and I will pick up salt on my way home.
Okay.
So that we can give them loose mineral.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the plan there. He didn't know that was the plan. That's the first time we talked about, it's time to harvest fodder trees. How's that going to work?
I have no idea.
You go out and snip the branches and you give them to animals. Do we want to give them to animals in the pasture? Synonymous with we're at the tippy top of the hill. We have fodder trees at the bottom of the hill for the animals at the top of the hill.
Yeah, you can take it over there if you want to.
So I'm going to feed the goats. Oh, mulberries are blooming. Like they're ripe.
Okay.
There was one that was almost ripe yesterday. Ryan Steva found a really nice mulberry plant at my Nashville duplex and took cuttings of it. He's like, these are really good tasting mulberries. I'm super excited, Nicole. And I'm like, well, why don't you take cuttings then? And I think he was calling me to ask if he could take cuttings. It's a mulberry, like just take some cuttings, man. But I appreciate that he asked, and we only have one. So we have 2 mulberry trees on property that I know of. One that gives fruit and the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
So, and I thought the one that gives fruit was a male until it started giving fruit, and I was like, oh, you're a female. So I'm assuming that one over there that's all tied up in the cedar tree is a male, because that's probably what it is. Is there a better way to plan rotation with the fodder harvest? If we had sheep on my property more regularly, which we don't right now because we haven't cracked that code, then they would be closer to the fodder trees. The real issue is that most of the fodder trees are on my property and the sheep are next door. And then every so often sheep come through here. And in fact, when weaning happens for all of the sheep, the males need to come over here, I believe.
Yeah, and the other side of that equation is the fact that they're not only next door, but they're on the upper half of the pasture, which I don't remember what I was doing the other day, but getting the 4-wheeler up the hill was a challenge. So it's like getting a 4-wheeler up the hill with a bunch of anything becomes even more of a challenge, if not just not possible.
The good thing is we don't have to harvest all the fodder trees this week, we can kind of keep harvesting from them for a few months right now. And they will, in another 2 to 3 weeks, be closer to where it's easy to bring them fodder.
Yeah.
So there's that. But also, by the end of June, at the latest, the boys have to be here, and we have to have figured out how to keep male sheep here.
Okay.
So, or the girls have to be here. There's more girls than boys, though, so I figured the boys would come here. Because we don't want anybody getting pregnant too soon. Like, I'm still worried that we'll have one more surprise birth from when Timmy did what Timmy did.
God only knows.
Yeah. We'll know when we know. We'll be like, oh, there's a baby out of season. Hello, baby out of season. That's happened before.
Yeah.
It's the July birthing, which isn't supposed to happen with sheep. Like, they're not supposed to be capable of it or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody was like, how did that happen? I'm like, because they're sheep and sheep don't read books. It's also time to trim.
Follow your rules.
It's time to trim hooves. So you and I need to talk about how that's going to happen.
Okay.
Without you riding sheep down the hill.
That would be preferable.
So we probably need to build a chute.
That's
which we're not doing in the upper one, but I understand we need to wait. But if we start talking about it now, it will be in place by the time the sheep are further down the hill.
Okay.
Okay. He's looking at me like we're not going to do that, but we've got to do something.
Okay.
Because they can die from foot problems if we don't do the foot thing.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing on that front.
We know we can get Stormies trimmed. It's just a 2-person job.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully Stormy will help us get the other ones to calm down. Speaking of Stormy, I heard she's a big girl now. What's that mean?
She is a big girl. She came back over here one time like 2 or 3 days ago, and it was the day I picked you up from the airport. And it was like one of those days where it's not supposed to rain, and all of a sudden you're about to get like, the worst rainstorm of the year. And I was like, between everything else, I was just like, it's easier if I just bring her back over here than trying to take a bottle up there and deal with the 15 other things that I had to do when I went over there. So I brought her back over here for one night, and then the next day she went right back over to the pasture. But she's still, I wouldn't say she's fully integrated, or she hasn't quite completely figured out the whole pasture thing. But
what do you mean by that?
Oh, I mean, or was it yesterday, I think, I went over, give the sheep pellets, gave her bottle, and then everybody else gets done with pellets, and they're like, oh, it's time for the evening graze, and they start walking off, and she did not follow immediately. So there's still some stuff that she hasn't quite figured out yet, but, when I go over there, she's in with everybody else, and then it's always really obvious which one she is, because she jumps up and starts wailing because she thinks I'm bringing a bottle every time she hears the four-wheeler. But, she's got a couple of things she's still got to figure out, but she's doing fine being over there. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. So she will probably always come wailing to you even after bottle time.
Oh, yeah.
But that's sheep. The thing we did with her that I think we did right was starting on day 2 or 3, we put her with other sheep as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that she would see like the babies starting to try to eat the grass and that sort of thing. A lot of people do bottle babies, and what's easier is to just keep them in the barn or keep them in your living room or wherever you're going to have them, because you have to feed them so often. My theory was, to the extent we can have her outside without it being too cold, which at the time of year she was born worked out really well this time.
Yeah.
Then we had that option. So she's done pretty well as far as just learning sheep behavior. Yeah. And she's actually super friendly with the two of us. And open to being friendly with other people, but she doesn't just run up to any person like a dog.
No.
So that's probably better because she also won't run up to the coyotes like they're a dog. Although she is friends with my dogs and your dog.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the dogs.
Yeah, she's fine with the dogs.
Yeah. So A-Rip here says, have you looked at the ramps with sandpaper? I would like to build a ramp with sandpaper. We talk about building ramps with sandpaper. We do not build ramps with sandpaper. And that might happen at some point. We might just have random graveyards of ramps with sandpaper in the pasture. Yes.
Might happen, which means it's never going to happen because I'm not going to do it.
Why not?
I have enough trouble moving stuff around in that pasture as it is.
My thought is we make little ramps and leave them, not move them. So certain pastures have ramps and certain ones don't in strategic places. I know you're kind of skeptical about the time it will take, but once you spend...
No, I'm skeptical about trying to run a lawnmower around that on that hill.
Yeah.
Like, I already have enough problems with, like, the fact that the fence charger is engulfed in weeds right now.
So I say we try it and make them so they can be moved, which means you can move them over and mow and move them over and mow, but not have to drag it like you drag the doghouse or the hay thing.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is when you discover how much time it is for us to trim all their hooves, you're going to hate it even more than the time it would take to have those. That's what I think is going to happen.
You won't have to deal with moving them all the time.
But you don't have to move them all the time because they don't go in every pasture. We just do every few pastures.
Okay.
Let's see how they work. I think it's worth doing. Anyway, this K is him shutting down and not agreeing with me at all, but not telling me he doesn't agree. That's what that means, right?
You know, as soon as I said it.
Yeah. I just know, I just know that I want the feet to be good. Anyway, it's a problem on a steep pasture for sure. I wonder if we could just put an attachment on the doghouse. Because that goes anyway. Without it being a son of a gun.
Maybe.
Like on a hinge or something. But then we'd be encouraging them to climb on the doghouse, which may not be the best choice.
I don't know.
19 watching and 8. Oh, yeah. So, guys, do me a favor. If you're watching this live stream, like it, share it, drop a comment. That helps other people see it. And it looks like we have an abysmal lack of likes this morning. So go for that. Okay. Next segment is grow. This is what we're growing in the garden. How would you say the garden's doing?
Really good.
Are you lying?
There's lots of green stuff up there.
Is it the right kind of green stuff?
It's not the green stuff you want.
It's actually not as bad as it looks from the outside right now, but like the weeds are in the pathways between the beds. There are weeds in the beds, but it's actually not that bad. Like you weeded that one bed, and that was the worst bed because we didn't get wood chips on that one side of that one bed that you weeded.
Yeah.
And it's fine.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a whole thing about like there's one area up there that normally would be absolutely horrible because rocks, big rocks, little rocks, and I actually got all of the rocks for the most part out of there, so I can actually just go up there with a weed eater and level that in like 5 minutes. So there's some areas like that. There's still some more stuff that needs to come out of there. And I'm hoping to get around to dealing with some more of that kind of thing in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, my goal has been do one garden thing a day, which almost didn't happen yesterday. And then I ended up in my PJs putting compost tea in the garden.
See, I wanted you to accomplish one thing in the garden.
But it is later than I usually plant my garden. But the good news is in Tennessee, that actually doesn't matter. It's not necessarily late for Tennessee. I've got beans up. So my green beans are up. I came home and they were about, 4 inches tall. I planted them the day before I left. I was gone for a week. Like, that's how fast they germinated. So the soil is perfect for that. The beets are growing slowly, but we had a high germination rate there. And with all of this rain, they've actually not overly dried out, which is nice. The thing that's not happening in my garden this year are some of the plants I like to plant, like fennel, is not going in until the fall because I just didn't do the starts for that. And I didn't get basil started, but I bought a single basil plant for $4.95 and put it in my aquaponics system. And it is ready to have 3 cuttings taken so you can root it. It will root within about a week, and then I'll have 4 basil plants. And by about another week after that, we'll be able to root another set. So my strategy is propagation over seedlings this year. And my only other issue at this point is the tomato wall is not done by my bedroom. So I have plants in the back area here that need to go out and don't have anywhere to go. But the tomato wall will look good by the end of this weekend. It kind of looks like tomatoes falling down that need to be trellised. So that'll happen. And it needs a better nutrient balance, I'm noticing. So I put some compost tea in there last night too.
Okay.
So that's what's happening with that. Let's see what else I had. Oh, how's the rock garden doing by the cabin?
It's doing fairly well. I had an issue with some ants. The use of chemical warfare took place with orange oil. And then other than that, I mean, I've got that one rosemary that's still alive. I just put a sage plant in next to it. The oregano that's down there exploded. And I've got some dill coming up. I put a couple of dill plants that I got at the store just to make sure that there was some in there. And those 2 plants, I'm just going to let go straight to seed just so that it reseeds that area. And then the other side of it, I've got some basil that looks like death, but we'll see how that does.
Okay. Well, I have a good, healthy basil plant up here.
Yeah.
And I put compost tea in the aquaponics system too yesterday.
Yeah.
The compost tea fairy flitted around the holler with compost tea, putting it on things yesterday. That's basically what happened.
And there's
I need wings, guys. I need wings so I can wear wings when I'm doing that.
Okay.
And you can too.
That's not going to happen.
I mean, I have you with the gold plastic shepherd's cane that Dawn sent.
And you also have a picture of me with that looking at you like I want to hit you with this thing.
You could have hit me with it. It wouldn't have hurt.
I could have made it hurt.
That's his mantra. I could have made it hurt. And then other than that, the food forest needs a good 12 hours of maintenance right now. The weeds are tall. I need to decide if I'm going to chop and drop or if I'm just going to chop and drop carefully while leaving the things I want, or if I'm just going to go nuts. So we'll see. Even though I put wood chips on one of them, it's pretty insane this year.
I have a plan to deal with that, but it's going to require you coming down there with me.
Yeah. So the strawberries did well this year, and they have chocolate mint all up in them on Hillside Garden. I would like to start transplanting more of those over into the food forest now that they're sending out all the runners. So that's totally theoretically going to happen. The yarrow is blooming, so it's time to harvest those flowers. And there's a couple existing rosemary plants on the property, but most of them are dead.
I actually need to go look to see if the one is still alive. I know of 2.
Yeah, so we planted a lot of rosemary plants, and the ones that were living from a temperature standpoint got nailed by ants.
Yeah, and that was why I was pissed when I found the one in the rock garden with ants, because it was the exact same thing that was going to happen, or that happened to the one that was up there was going to happen to this one, and I was like, no.
They're suggesting I wear a tinfoil tiara when I do the compost tea next time.
Okay.
We should get video of that. There's a video you need to help me make.
Okay.
Okay. Is the weed torch still working?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's involved in the video you need to help me make.
Okay.
Okay, sweet. We're going to have some fun this week, guys. That's the plan. Okay, Jerusalem artichokes are doing well in my upper garden where I don't want them. And they almost choked out the bee balm, but the bee balm, so the leaf shape of a Jerusalem artichoke and bee balm are similar. And I was kind of like, well, I'm going to start pulling some of this Jerusalem artichoke back because it's creeping towards my garden beds. And then I found bee balm short mixed in it. So now the bee balm's doing well because I freed it from the Jerusalem artichokes. And then we had some over by Sage's grave. And I'm going to go over there with you today and see if we still have some.
Okay.
Because it's actually a root vegetable I like. I did not harvest much of it last year. All based on the size of the patch in my upper garden, I need to harvest that for the stuff I'm going to let live. Although it's at the perfect height where if I cut it, most of its energy is in the plant. Oh. And a lot of the roots will die back if I get it now. So next up is the catch-up list. What's on your catch-up? So I've been gone. Let's talk about that first. How was it with me gone this time?
It wasn't horrible, but it was kind of bad timing with the ducks refusing to go to bed.
It's easier for two people to chase ducks to bed than one person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it's
you need to keep talking about that because I'm going to walk in the other room and pee.
Okay.
That's just what's going to happen. Okay, go.
But it was kind of a situation where it's okay, I really want to make dinner, but ducks need to go to bed in 10 minutes and that's not going to happen. So, 45 minutes later, I finally get around to starting on dinner. But I mean, other than a couple of things like that, I had decent meal plans. So I actually had everything in line to start cooking and not hitting that point at night where it's I need to figure out exactly what I'm doing for dinner. And so I stall for 30, 45 minutes, an hour before I actually start cooking. But I mean, by and large, this time around, it was mostly just maintaining and still making some headway with, being able to get over to the pasture and keep up with the mowing behind the sheep and a little bit of progress on some equipment maintenance and some other stuff like that. So, I mean, by and large, it went pretty well.
So now you've got a backlog of stuff you weren't really working on because I was gone.
Yes.
I've got a backlog of stuff I want to do. There's an impossibly long list.
Yeah.
So what do you think the next focus is going to be? I have a list here, but I don't know if my list matches your list. What do you want to do first?
I mean, the first thing that I'm planning on today is getting back on the weed eater and clearing some more stuff out. Hopefully getting you outside for a couple of minutes to figure out stuff that can or cannot die. And then possibly making a dump run today because I've got piles of broken cinder blocks and bricks in various locations, and I'm tired of. I'd say I'm inclined to say I'm tired of tripping over that. It's more along the lines of I'm tired of running the weeder, and all of a sudden it's banging two sledgehammers together because I hit a cinder block.
Thank you for not saying the F word right there. I appreciate that. I try not to say it too much on my podcast. So, yeah. So that's called Operation Eyesore around here, and we've been. It's kind of hard for people who visit here to understand, but we've been working really extra hard on it for a few months now. And I'm not sure you see visually that it looks better here from that standpoint because we were pretty good at hiding the junk. But this homestead, since I bought it, has been a source of more and more useless stuff. It's almost like you get rid of something and then like you find a whole nother area where there's other stuff. It was that way when I got here, and then some things I did created more junk. So, but also as we've been updating things, there's debris that comes from it, and that stuff is hard to get off of the homestead because getting a dumpster here is hard. So we end up taking it by the truckload to the county dump.
Yeah, and like cinder blocks materialize around here. They either come out of the ground, or I finally got pissed off at this one section and was like, I'm gonna just go on a murder spree and kill everything except for the trees. And sure enough, there's a massive pile of broken cinder blocks in amongst all of the weeds.
The cats are bound and determined to stop this live stream by jumping on the computer. I'm guessing their food is low in their dish.
It's not, because I filled it up this morning.
Smart. Okay, because I did not fill it up this morning. So every homestead has piles of hidden junk, either newly created or newly discovered. That's from A. Rapier. That is not wrong. That is not wrong, AR.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I've found some really interesting stuff.
Okay, so I have as a priority that the garden needs to be better. It's doing okay for where we are, but like I have a whole list of stuff that has to happen up there, and that you have a sheep pasture to move that's a pain in the butt. Tell us about that.
It's more along the lines of I need to pre-stage or have everything prepped for the next 4 or 5 paddocks, because where I'm moving the sheep next is going to cut off a lot of access. So with the next 2 paddocks, I really need to change kind of how those paddocks rotate, but that's not really an option at this point. So it's, I need to get up there and get the paddock lines cleared, get the post at least up to the top of the hill before I move them to the next paddock, because once that happens, then, if you need to take, a pile of 20, 30 step-in posts up to the top of the hill, you're going to be walking.
Yeah. So he has to be ready for 4 sheep moves.
Yeah, basically.
That's a lot. And then I've got the workshop and the rabbits. The rabbits need to be handled differently.
The workshop is also on my priority list, and part of the rabbit is dependent upon the workshop.
So anybody who's seen my presentations in like the last 3 events, it's been a lot about what do you do on a homestead if you have too many priorities and not enough time. And here's what we do. Out of all of those, what I propose is that I take lead on garden and ask for your help if I run into something I need your help for. Unless you're just like, I need a break, so I'm going to the garden, which I know you sometimes do.
Yeah.
So that's what I suggest. And you focus on the sheep move, because once that's done, it's done. And it has to be done. And it's a no-kill list sort of thing.
Yeah. And part of that's also dependent upon the weather, and that's one of the things complicating it right now is I need to run the lawnmower. Coming off the hill last night on the 4-wheeler was really interesting.
Yeah, see, that's why I haven't wanted to go running up there.
Yeah, and there's been a number of times in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's literally you come over the edge of the hill, you lock the rear tires up, and you basically ski, 200-300 yards down the hill.
Oh, so I'm not going up there anytime soon.
I don't think you want to go up there right
I'm going up there. I'm hiking.
Yeah. Like,
I was like, I want to see little sheep though.
Normally, like, if she gets on the 4-wheeler with me, it's like, oh, do you want me to get off and walk? I'm just like, no. At this point, there's some places in the pasture where if she was on the 4-wheeler with me, I'm going to be telling her to get off and walk, because I ain't taking another person like lugging a 5-gallon jug of water up there just with the extra, whatever that is, 40 pounds is like sketch.
Yeah, I'm just not. I'm only going up there if I'm required, and I'm probably hiking if it happens after hearing that.
Yeah, it's actually the last, I don't know, 3 weeks or so, it's been interesting.
Well, because it's like as the rain ramps up, we're at the more and more steep and further away part of the pasture. So it's like, of course, this couldn't happen when we were down by the barn.
Yeah.
No. We got to make it hard. And I'm a big chicken about being on a downhill side. So that's how we're doing catch up, is we're choosing out of that whole list a couple of things. And then if you bang something out because you're bored, that's fine. Because sometimes there's like these little 20-minute projects that we can bang out.
Yeah.
But,
and
also
realizing that some of those 20-minute projects turn into like half-day projects.
It's true.
Because
I'm replacing the roof on my camper this weekend, and the only help I think I need from you is getting that air conditioner out off the roof.
Okay.
And I know you look like, but like we need to talk about that today because I want to start in the morning tomorrow.
Okay.
Which means we need to talk about that today.
Okay.
Like legitimately need help. I don't know how to take it out.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's going to be a brutal, awful job that he's not helping me with. Because I have other people coming in to help me with it.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Okay.
So I've never seen such an angry redneck as the other day when he hit his head on my door on the way out of the camper after being pretzeled in doing wiring stuff.
That was not a kosher
Many F's were said, and I was like, you don't like working on campers? And he's like, oh, I thought I was done with working in tiny spaces when I stopped being on ships. It was a whole military diatribe about hitting his head. So that was the time I decided, okay, well, I can scrape. That's what I need to do, is scrape all of the rubber off that roof, which is going to be a pain in the butt, and then throw the tarp back over it. And then we need to build the plywood top again after I've cut out some of the vent pipes. We don't need any more on it. And then Ken is coming out to help with the roof install on Monday, which means I have 2 days to get it done. That's why I'm being all in your face about it. Because I don't want to be working on it at 4 p.m. because it's too hot.
Yeah.
So that's going to be like morning project. And I'll probably do garden 30s in the evening like I used to get the garden going.
Okay.
So you guys might see some Garden 30 live streams. We'll see. I was approved to go live on TikTok, and they cannot agree that I'm over 18. So I may never be able to go live on TikTok. I don't know what the deal is with that. So screw you, TikTok. That's all I got to say right now. What's the silence about?
Oh, that just reminds me of something else that took forever for it to be decided about you.
What? Oh, that was a woman?
Yeah.
I had to prove I was a woman. Yeah, that was fun. That took 2 years. There's a faster way to do it, but I wouldn't probably have agreed. So next segment is Holler Neighbors and Community. What's going on in the community?
Oh.
We have Sunday dinner, and Nighthawk asked if other people were welcome because his parents are in town. Okay. And I'm like, of course they're welcome. So Sunday we're doing a Holler Neighbor dinner. We haven't done one in a while because I've been gone, but they did one while I was gone.
Yeah, that actually worked out really well for me.
He was having a bad day, and then the notice came that there was dinner at the Ever Souls, and Tactical was probably super happy that day because he didn't have to cook.
Well, that was one of those, the notice came out that there was dinner, and then I got over to the sheep pasture and had like part of the permanent fence was down, which required, 5 trips walking up and down the hill and splicing stuff back together again. And I think it only took me like half an hour to get that fixed, but it was a major inconvenience and threw my entire evening schedule off. So
yeah, the context of the getting dinner cooked thing is that dinner doesn't have to take a lot of your time to cook on a homestead, especially if you can do the crock pot or the sous vide. But when I'm wanting to cook from the things that I grow, it does take time. So like my ideal schedule makes it so that I can stop work at 4 or 4:30 and do all the prep work for dinner, whatever that is, whether it's harvesting and cleaning and cutting vegetables or, whatever that is, or starting a casserole in the oven. And then I usually have another gap where I can go do things again. And usually those things are related to decluttering in my house, which is a constant battle. And then once that's done, like the actual cooking part takes maybe 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah. And I don't know if I actually told you this, but one of the things that I was doing while you were gone was some of like the chicken thighs were already in a vacuum sealed bag. So that was a nice, easy turn the sous vide on to heat Stormy's bottle up. Once her bottle comes out, crank the temperature up to 145 and throw a bag of meat in there. And
that's why I package them that way.
By the time I got, everything else done and the ducks to bed, that meat was hot and, 15 minutes to stir fry some vegetables or something and I've got dinner. That part was actually very convenient.
Yeah, that's why we package them that way.
Yeah.
Or I have trays you can put like straight in the oven. It's better if you let them defrost first from a timing standpoint, but if you don't, as long as you put it in at like 350 and not higher.
Yeah.
And leave them in long enough, they will, like those casseroles will just cook from frozen.
Yeah.
But when you're alone on the homestead, that's where you're like, man, it's 8 o'clock and I still haven't thought about dinner or started cooking dinner. And if you thought about it in advance, that's fine. But if you have something happen, like a fence has to be repaired,
yeah,
it's like all bets are off, which is why we have those pizzas out there too.
Yeah.
So there's always the pizza ripcord. This in our wider community, a number of dogs have passed away that were people's pets that they loved. Like Jack's dog Charlie died, which is really sad. And then Brian and Corey from the Lots Project lost baby Walter, who was like 4 years old. Like that one was totally out of left field. And then our friend John Dowie lost his dog very suddenly too. So there's been a rash of those things. And I think, when you form a special bond, like a special, very close bond with a dog, it hurts a lot. When like my bond with Sage was pretty strong and that was really hard for me. So
that one was hard for me too.
Yeah. So we're just
wasn't even my dog.
I just want them to know we love them and sorry, like that just sucks. But, give some people some extra care who are losing their dogs in the community. It seems to have all happened at one time. Next segment is infrastructure. When are you going to put the rabbit coop in? When are you going to put the rabbit coop in? When are you going to put the rabbit coop in? When are you going to put the rabbit coop in? How many trucks are in the hauler right now?
This makes me
6.
This
How many trucks work that are
days.
in the hauler right now? 1. That is just our weekly check-in for how many trucks there are. There are 6 trucks and 1 works right now. Do you think we can improve that statistic by the end of next week by ordering a part for your Yoda?
Not. Maybe.
That's low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
The other way to improve the statistic is to get rid of trucks that don't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's my weekly joke, like how many trucks there are and how many. Somebody else wrote me, so AutoFab wrote me a note. He's like, keep those trucks. They make good storage out of the weather storage areas. I was like, nope, that is not where we're going with this one. So, yeah, Beth says, so sorry for everybody's dog loss. Absolutely. We have a tree down on a fence that's got to come out. We have a tree down in the middle of a pasture that's in your way, right?
I did get that halfway gone.
All the trees are falling. I got another tree down the hauler that's going to totally go over the road eventually.
Yeah.
We're going to have a second problem with that tree falling on my fence that already fell on my fence once. That's going to be a fun one. And then the fun infrastructure thing that doesn't feel like you're being nagged is all about compost. Tactical has suddenly become interested in compost. Why did that happen? What happened there?
It's not a sudden interest in compost. It's more along the lines of we're to a point now to where we actually need legit compost, and I'm tired of 15 compost piles all over the property. And the last 2 that I dug out should have taken, an hour, and it was like a half-day project. And so I'm trying to get a little more streamlined and purposeful about it. And especially with like the pasture is to a point to where it would really benefit from some compost tea, but we really don't have any decent compost that would be suitable for that purpose.
Have you checked out the humanure pile that's ready to be shoveled out?
Yep.
Is it bad?
It's horrible.
What's wrong with it?
You'll have to go look at it, but it looks like death. And there's vines all up in there.
Okay.
And there's not much material there to start with. And yeah.
What does looks like death mean specifically?
Compost isn't supposed to be a light gray.
Oh, somebody put ashes in there. That's what that is?
Somebody put a lot of things in there.
Okay. Yeah.
So that pile, I'm inclined to just use it to smooth out that area.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to. So a friend of mine in Idaho, he puts the humanure in 55-gallon drums throughout his orchard that have like direct contact with the earth.
Yeah.
And when they've been there for 2 years, he can just lift up the drum and spread it out, and it works really well. And he doesn't put other weird ashy things, and also doesn't have the viney problem that those other piles had.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested in an approach like that. I don't know if we could maybe do it a different way, or if we want, like, the solid sides of the barrel are kind of nice.
Yeah, that's a conversation we can have, and we need to have in the relatively near future.
Yeah, we'll talk about that and other options, because it's pretty easy to compost humanure, but the thing about the compost pile for humanure is you end up continually adding to it.
Yeah.
And at some point you have to say stop, and now I'm going to compost you. With the smaller 55-gallon drums, or just a smaller sort of pile,
yeah,
then you get to that process faster, which seems, because we get it all at once and then sort of slow over time. Yeah. If it was the primary method here, it would be a different thing, I think.
Yeah.
But it's like we're gonna get a few buckets in 2 weeks at the event.
Yeah, and then we'll get a bucket every 2 or 3 months after that.
Yeah, except for we have other events. But yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just the deal. And people who are using it as their primary in-house form of handling poop, that, you're looking at a bucket every 2 to 3 days based on what Carly goes through.
Yeah.
So then it's just a little bit easier. I think it's easier to time your piles with that. So anyway, that's going to be a fun one. So we're going to actually, we just finished, we've been watching a show at night, and the show we're going to start watching is Jack's compost course. So that's happening instead of TV shows. And I think that'll help us agree on what we're doing. What are you doing? Okay, I gotcha. He didn't want to say what he was doing, but shoes went and the mic got put down, which tells me he has to pee too. So that's infrastructure. Next up, I'm going to talk about where the money's been going. So we've spent a lot of money on vehicles because I was hit, and my car would have been totaled, I think, by the insurance company had they decided that they were going to cover it. But since they didn't cover it, I called the body shop, and I'm able to get my vehicle back up and running for about $3,000, which is less than the car is worth. So it's not going to be pretty, but it will be back up and running. I have another truck, a Tundra, I can drive right now, and he has purchased a Jeep. So we are back. We have 3 vehicles for 2 people, which is the goal. One of them is 4-wheeler, and that the Tahoe will be a backup on the 4-wheel drive standpoint / it can haul my camper. So we're at the point where I went shopping for cars while I was out of town on my break. And I went to the Toyota dealership and just tried a bunch of different Toyotas. And I ended up deciding I really do want a 4Runner. I want the TRD series though, and not the SR5. And it can be TRD or TRD Pro, don't care. They both drive nicely. I compared it to a Tacoma, because the Tacoma chassis is what the Toyota 4Runner is on. And I just like the 4Runner better for my needs. That being said, the amount of money to buy one. So looking at the used market and looking at the new market, it makes more sense to buy a new one. Because if I get one a couple years old, it's within $5,000 of the new one. And the interest rates, if I'm going to finance it on the new ones, are lower enough that erases pretty much the advantage. And I get the warranty on the new one. So it actually makes sense in our current car market to buy a new one, unless I find a screaming deal from somebody who's just trying to unload it because they're in a bad place, or I don't know. So I was thinking about just paying off my house, which is close to paid off right now, and kind of replacing the house payment with a car payment of about the same amount. It's actually a little bit less. And then trading in some of the 5 trucks that don't work, getting them working enough to trade them in, and maybe throwing some money down from the savings account. And then I started looking at my long-term goals. And one of the things that's very time consuming in my week is going swimming in the pool. And when I do get my regular lap swims in, it's actually noticeable improvement on my health. And so I think what's really going to happen is I'm going to continue to drive beater cars for a while and prioritize the installation of a swim spa here so that I have an easier time getting laps in and doing it more than once a week. Because right now I invest a lot of time to get one swim in a week most of the time, unless I'm speaking at a weekend event, in which case I don't get it done. And I've been speaking at weekend events like every weekend since the beginning of time, it seems like. And that may seem like a weird prioritization, but I'm thinking about 70-year-old Nicole being healthier because of that decision, and how that makes the end of life stuff that happens better in theory, versus next week Nicole having a nicer car to drive. And I think both will eventually come, but I think the swim spa is a better long-term decision for my health and for the long term. And so that's actually the priority if I have to choose between the two. You missed the whole thing.
I'm aware of the conversation.
Yeah. He's actually not been super upset with me, which I was thinking he was going to be really irritated about that when I came back talking about that. Because in order to get one in, things have to happen here, which means more construction. And so the talk I want to have with you is how to get that done without it dominating your time like this did.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that looks like. My next steps are to assess what needs to be in place for it to be installed here from a concrete and infrastructure standpoint, and how that relates to that part of the house, which is where I think it should go.
Okay.
And then I was going to test swim some other brands of swim spas to see if I can get one for less than an endless pool. But I also talked to a person who has a bunch of used endless pools.
Yeah.
Or whatever they're called. Endless. Yeah, I think it's endless, actually. They swim really nice, but I've seen also a lot of complaints about their customer service. So I'm a little concerned about that brand right now. But the problem is they swim really nice.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, Letty says, we looked at 4Runners 2 years ago, but went with the Expedition because they were more leg room in the front seats. And I'm worried Yeah, to a giant, that's pretty important. I'm not a giant, so I can do a 4Runner. Yeah. He can drive the Tundra if he wants to. Yeah. Adam says, I went from a Tacoma to a 4Runner. The 4Runner was way nicer. Yeah, it just rides nicer. It's like less stiff, basically, was my experience. And had the Tacoma driven similarly to the 4Runner, I would have just bought a shell for it and gotten the truck, probably, because it's like $10,000 cheaper.
Yeah.
But like it drives so nice for the 4Runner. So that's just, I mean, that's how we're making that, how I'm making that decision is, investing a bunch of money in my personal health now is way better than investing that money in treating problems later. That's sort of how I'm seeing it. And that's been like brought down and very clear to me this year based on everything that's happened in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I've got from the Holler Homestead today. I don't see any questions that are unanswered right now. Do you have anything else you want to update on from around here?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, guys, if you like the show and want to support the work we're doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. 2, consider becoming a member. The next webinar I have scheduled is with Joel Salatin, and it is a member benefit. So I would recommend checking out those benefits. Go over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.